It was a blistering Saturday afternoon, the kind where the Texas sun feels like it's personally offended by your existence. I was out by the front gate of my 50-acre ranch, fixing a loose post, when I saw her silver SUV barreling down the county road. Dust swirled behind her like a bad omen. I'd only moved out here 6 months ago, craving solitude after years in the city, but Karen HOA, president of the nearby Willow Creek subdivision, had other plans for my peace. My ranch, Blackthorn Hollow, wasn't part of her precious HOA. I'd made that clear when I bought the place, double-checking with the county to ensure no covenants could touch my land. Freedom was why I came here, freedom to raise my horses, grow my crops, and live without someone telling me my mailbox needed to be regulation beige. But Karen didn't care about deeds or boundaries. To her, my ranch was an affront, a wild patch of defiance in her manicured kingdom. She'd been hounding me since day one. First, it was complaints about my unsightly barn, which she claimed lowered property values a mile away. Then, she griped about my horses kicking up dust that somehow drifted into her gated community. Last week, she sent a letter demanding I let her inspect my property to ensure it met community standards. I laughed and tossed it in the burn pile. My land, my rules. But today, Karen wasn't sending letters. She screeched to a stop at my gate, her SUV blocking the road. The gate was locked, always was, to keep out trespassers and, well, people like her. I straightened up, wiping sweat from my brow, and watched her storm out of the car, her bleach-blonde bob bouncing with every furious step. She wore a crisp white blouse and a lanyard with Willow Creek HOA President in bold letters, as if it were a badge of royalty. "Open this gate right now, Ethan Caldwell," she barked, jabbing a manicured finger at me. "I have every right to be here." I leaned against the gate, my hammer dangling in one hand. "Afternoon, Karen. You lost. This ain't Willow Creek." Her face reddened, a vein pulsing in her forehead. "Don't play dumb with me. Your property is a disgrace. That mud pit you call a driveway is ruining our aesthetic, and I've had complaints about your animals making noise at night. I'm here to inspect, and you will let me in." I chuckled, low and slow. "Karen, my land's not in your HOA. You got no jurisdiction here. And last I checked, my horses don't answer to you." She stepped closer, close enough I could smell her floral perfume clashing with the earthiness of my ranch. "You think you're above the rules, don't you? I've got half a mind to report you to the county for code violations." "Go ahead," I said, crossing my arms. "County's already been out here. My place is clean. Now, why don't you head back to your cul-de-sac and leave me be?" That's when her eyes narrowed, and I saw the spark of something dangerous. Karen wasn't used to hearing no. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. "You're making a big mistake, Ethan. I'm calling the sheriff. We'll see how smug you are when they drag you off your precious ranch." I raised an eyebrow. "For what? Owning my own land?" "For obstructing a lawful inspection," she snapped, already dialing. "You're a menace, and I'm done playing nice." I watched her pace as she spoke to the dispatcher, her voice rising with every word. "Yes, I'm at Blackthorn Hollow. He's refusing access, threatening me." That last part was a lie, but I wasn't surprised. Karen had a reputation in Willow Creek for bending the truth to get her way. Neighbors whispered about her fining people for unapproved flower beds or calling the cops on kids skateboarding. She ruled her subdivision like a dictator, and now she'd set her sights on me. As she ranted into her phone, a few Willow Creek residents started gathering down the road, drawn by the commotion. I recognized Tom, the retired mechanic who'd warned me about Karen when I moved in. He gave me a sympathetic nod, but I could tell he was enjoying the show. So was I, in a way, until I heard sirens. Karen smirked, hanging up. "Sheriff's on the way." "You're done, Ethan." I didn't budge. "We'll see." The next 10 minutes felt like an eternity. The sun beat down, and Karen kept up her tirade, listing every imagined offense my ranch had committed. She complained about my windmill, clashing with the neighborhood vibe, my fence being too rustic, even the wildflowers along my property line she called them weeds that needed to go. I let her talk, knowing she was digging her own grave. When the sheriff's cruiser pulled up, Deputy Ramirez stepped out, adjusting his hat. I knew him from town, was a no-nonsense guy who'd grown up on a farm and understood land rights. Karen rushed over, her voice dripping with fake distress. "Officer, thank God you're here. This man's been hostile, refusing to let me inspect his property for HOA violations." Ramirez glanced at me, then back at her. "Ma'am, is this property part of Willow Creek HOA?" Karen faltered. "Well, no, but..." "Then what's the issue?" he cut in, his tone flat. She sputtered, waving her arms. "His property's an eyesore. It's affecting our community. I have a right to ensure it meets standards." Ramirez sighed, turning to me. "Ethan, you refusing her access?" "Yup," I said. "My land, my rules. She's got no business here." Karen's face went purple. "You can't just ignore me. I'm the HOA president. I represent the community." "Ma'am," Ramirez said, his patience thinning, "if this land's not in your HOA, you've got no authority. You're trespassing on private property." "Trespassing?" she shrieked. "I'm protecting property values. He's the one breaking the law." That's when things escalated. Karen, in a fit of rage, grabbed the gate and shook it, as if she could tear it down with sheer willpower. The chain rattled, and the lock held firm, but her tantrum drew gasps from the growing crowd. Tom whispered something to the woman next to him, and she stifled a laugh. Karen's authority was crumbling, and she knew it. "Karen," I said, stepping forward, "you're making a fool of yourself. Go home." Her eyes blazed. "You'll regret this, Ethan. I'll make sure everyone in Willow Creek knows what a terrible neighbor you are. I'll have your ranch condemned." That was the last straw. I'd kept my cool, but her threats were crossing a line. I pulled out my own phone, hitting record. "Say that again, Karen. Threatening to abuse your power. That's a bold move in front of witnesses." She froze, realizing the crowd was now filming too. Her empire of control was unraveling, and the sheriff's deputy wasn't on her side. Ramirez stepped closer, his voice firm. "Ma'am, I suggest you leave before this gets worse." But Karen wasn't done. She turned to the crowd, pointing at me. "You all see this? He's tearing our community apart. We can't let people like him ruin everything we've built." The neighbors didn't buy it. Tom spoke up, his voice carrying. "Karen, you've been bullying folks for years. Maybe it's time you let people live." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Karen's face twisted, caught between fury and humiliation. She'd overplayed her hand, and now the community she'd lorded over was turning on her. Karen's eyes darted from Tom to the other neighbors, her carefully constructed facade cracking like dry Texas clay. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a chorus of discontent she couldn't silence. She'd ruled Willow Creek with an iron grip, but out here, on my land, her power was nothing but hot air. Deputy Ramirez stood firm, his hand resting casually on his belt, a silent warning that this wasn't her domain. "You're all ungrateful." Karen snapped, her voice shrill enough to spook my horses grazing 100 yards away. "I've worked tirelessly to keep our community pristine, and this cowboy thinks he can undermine everything." She jabbed a finger at me again, her lanyard swinging like a pendulum of her fading authority. I kept my phone recording, capturing every word. "Keep talking, Karen," I said, my tone steady but laced with the kind of quiet menace that comes from knowing you're in the right. "You're doing a fine job showing everyone who you really are." Her lips pursed, and for a moment, I thought she might back down. But Karen wasn't wired for retreat. Instead, she doubled down, spinning to face Ramirez. "Officer, are you seriously going to let this man defy me? I have a petition signed by half the neighborhood demanding action against this eyesore." Ramirez raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Ma'am, I don't care about your petition. This is private property. Unless you've got a court order, you're out of line." The crowd buzzed again, and I caught a few nods of approval. Karen's petition was news to me, but it didn't surprise me. She'd probably coerced signatures from her neighbors, threatening fines or worse. That was her playbook, intimidation dressed up as community spirit. But out here, with the sun baking the earth and my gate standing firm, her tactics were falling apart. "Fine," she spat, storming back to her SUV. I thought she might leave, but instead, she yanked open the door and pulled out a thick manila folder. She marched back to the gate, slapping the folder against it with a dramatic thud. Papers fluttered, some catching the breeze and skittering across the dirt. "This is proof," she declared. "Proof that your property is a public nuisance. I've got photos, complaints, and a lawyer ready to sue you into oblivion." I glanced at the paper's blurry photos of my barn, my horses, even my old pickup truck parked by the fence. One page had a handwritten list of violations, including excessive dust and unapproved vegetation. It was laughable, but the effort she put into it was chilling. This wasn't just a power trip, it was an obsession. "Karen," I said, stepping closer to the gate, "you've got no case. My land's zoned agricultural, and I've got every permit in order. You're wasting your time and looking like a fool doing it." Her eyes blazed, but before she could fire back, Tom stepped forward from the crowd. "She's been pulling this nonsense for years," he said, his gravelly voice cutting through the tension. "Last month, she fined me for parking my RV in my own driveway. Said it was unsightly. I paid up just to avoid the hassle, but I'm done, Karen. We're all done." A woman in the crowd, Mrs. Larson, who ran the local bakery, piped up next. "You tried to make me repaint my house because the shade of blue wasn't approved. It's my house. You don't own us." The murmurs turned into a wave of voices, each neighbor airing their grievances. Karen's reign had been built on fear, but that fear was evaporating under the Texas sun. She stood there, clutching her folder, her face a mask of disbelief. For the first time, she wasn't in control, and it was unraveling her. Ramirez cleared his throat, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, I'm giving you one last chance to leave. If you don't, I'll have to cite you for trespassing and disturbing the peace." Karen's jaw dropped. "Disturbing the peace? Me? He's the one causing trouble." She pointed at me again, but her voice cracked, betraying her panic. "Enough," Ramirez said. "Get in your car and go, or I'll have to escort you out." The crowd went silent, waiting for her next move. Karen's eyes flicked from Ramirez to me, then to the neighbors who'd turned against her. She was cornered, and she knew it. But instead of backing down, she made her fatal mistake. In a fit of desperation, she lunged at the gate, grabbing the lock and yanking it with all her might. The chain held, but her manicured nails scraped against the metal, and she let out a scream of frustration that echoed across the hills. "That's it," Ramirez said, pulling out his handcuffs. "You're under arrest for attempted trespass and disorderly conduct." The crowd gasped as he stepped forward, guiding Karen's hands behind her back. She thrashed, screaming about lawsuits and her rights, but Ramirez was unfazed. He read her rights as he led her to the cruiser, her lanyard catching on the door as she was placed in the back seat. The image was almost poetic: Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of Willow Creek, dethroned in handcuffs. As the cruiser's door slammed shut, the neighbors erupted in cheers. Tom clapped me on the shoulder, grinning. "About time someone stood up to her," he said. "You did us all a favor, Ethan." I nodded, but my eyes were on Karen. Through the cruiser's window, I saw her glaring at me, her face a mix of rage and humiliation. I didn't feel triumph, though just a quiet resolve. I'd come to Blackthorn Hollow for peace, and I'd defend it, no matter who tried to take it. Ramirez drove off, and the crowd began to disperse, some lingering to swap stories about Karen's tyranny. I stayed by the gate, picking up the scattered papers she'd left behind. One was a letter to the county, demanding they seize my land for public use. It was absurd, but it showed how far she'd been willing to go. I tucked the papers under my arm, evidence for whatever came next. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Word of Karen's arrest spread like wildfire, and Willow Creek's HOA meetings turned into battlegrounds. Neighbors, emboldened by the scene at my ranch, started challenging her leadership. Tom and Mrs. Larson organized a petition not to harass anyone, but to dissolve the HOA entirely. They had more signatures than Karen ever dreamed of. Karen, meanwhile, faced more than just legal trouble. Her arrest had been filmed by half a dozen neighbors, and the videos hit the internet, racking up thousands of views. Local news picked up the story, dubbing her the HOA tyrant. Her reputation was in tatters, and her lawyer's threats against me fizzled when the county confirmed my property was untouchable. But the real reckoning came at the next HOA election. Karen ran for re-election, clinging to her title like a lifeboat. She didn't stand a chance. The neighbors, fed up with years of her bullying, voted her out in a landslide. Tom took her place as president, promising a live and let live approach. The first thing he did was repeal half of Karen's petty rules. I thought that would be the end of it, but Karen wasn't one to slink away quietly. A month after her arrest, I got a call from Ramirez. "Thought you'd want to know," he said. "Karen's been digging into your property records, trying to find something to use against you. She's also been spreading rumors in town, saying you're running an illegal operation out there." I wasn't surprised, but I was done playing defense. I took her folder of evidence to a lawyer friend in town, who laughed at the absurdity of her claims. We filed a defamation suit, using her own documents and the videos from that day to prove her malice. The lawsuit wasn't about money, it was about making sure she couldn't hurt anyone else. The case dragged on, but the outcome was inevitable. Karen's lies collapsed under scrutiny, and the judge ordered her to pay legal fees and issue a public apology. She refused the apology, of course, but the financial hit was enough to force her to sell her Willow Creek McMansion and move to a condo across town. The neighborhood threw a block party the day her moving truck left. As for me, I stayed at Blackthorn Hollow, tending my horses and watching the wildflowers bloom. The gate stayed locked, and the sign on it "Me Own Edition" read, "Private property, no Karens allowed." It wasn't just about keeping her out, it was a reminder that freedom comes with a price, and sometimes, you have to stand your ground to keep it.